Chase success with Global.Media.com and celebrate it with or without champagne.
Hello, everyone. Sorry to keep you waiting. I had to deal with my content issues. I can't call it technical issues really, because it was just me trying to make sure that I got all the content that I want. And I always plan a show, right? So that involves me having my videos ready. If my videos are not ready, I get into a flap, and it always takes time to get your videos uploaded and everything working the way it should. Now, welcome, of course, and I say Michael's here, which gives me joy. Americo, welcome. I'm glad you're here. Whoever else is here, please do drop us a comment so I can welcome you properly. America, I'm sure I sent you the StreamYard link. If you want to join the studio to talk branding, then please feel free. Do join us. I'd love to hear your thoughts on today's topic. I guess let's do the preliminaries now. Liana, welcome. Glad you're here. I dream of the day where we actually hear Liana's voice, but we will one day, I'm sure. If not on my show, on someone else's show. But thank you for being here. Now, so this is my signature room. This is the room that I started all my live events on. This is the room that's the first one we ever did. And I guess I love the topic. Of course, I love the topic. And the topic is, it's close to my heart, because my thing is talking about how we achieve our potential, how we achieve business growth, how we be the best we can be. I was talking to my son earlier. My son is 16, and he's got this. He thinks the way I used to think, and the way I used to think is quite simply: work harder, do more. You can be. Everything will come to you when you work harder. Stop shouting, Michael. I'm going to mute you for a second. So literally, my son's thing is that everything, is down to hard work. I'm trying to explain to him that everything is the other way. It's mindset. It's about creating our reality. And that's what this room talks about, really. How do we create the business we want? How do we get the results we really want? And it's I always say it's 98% mindset and only 2% of our technical skills and what we actually do. Of course, let's be sure. I'm not standing here saying to you, work on mindset and that's it. That's not how it works. The mindset has to go with actually doing, right? Actually doing, and making sure that we're taking action. But that's the way mindset works. Again, trying to explain to my son that you first you have to visualize what you want. And then after visualizing, you have to learn to listen to what you want to do. That's the way mindset really works in my little world. I call the instructions that we get, the guidance that we get from the gods, the universe, whatever you like. I call those downloads. My son says, "Nah, they don't exist," but I know they exist because I've done the hard work thing. I did the hard work thing for, I think, the best part of 7 years. I got to a place my business where I was surviving. And then you realize moving forward, it's not as easy as it looks. Now, moving forward, for me, the thing that moved me forward in the end, it was learning about mindset, learning about how the world works, universal laws, learning about the power of manifestation, law of attraction, all those things, right? Yeah, Michael has a welcome, Mike. I see you. I agree. You need clarity in your mind, right? Clarity in your mind. That's goal setting, whether that's visualization, meditating. All of that leads us to finding out the next step in our path. But when we learn to apply mindset, spirituality, blind faith sometimes, or just faith as a whole, right? And also, I guess emotions like kindness and so on. Kindness. And so Mike and I argue about the importance of love, for example. Now these are all part of the mix that gets us to where we are, right? Today's conversation will include all those things, I'm sure. So let me work at Tracy. Welcome. I'm not Tracy. You know how hungry I am. I'm starving, but I can't eat until after the show. I figured there's no point me eating and then passing out because I'm stuffed, right? So here I am. Here I am. Here I am. Look, I'm working on many amazing projects. Again, is it luck or is it because I manifested and wished and dreamed and hoped and prayed and meditated on getting more work, getting more clients, getting more brilliant clients? Not just I don't meditate just for clients anymore. I'm more specific about the clients I want. I want some clients like my better clients. If you were here earlier, then not here. If you were with me earlier, then you would have been in my room with my new best friend, Dr. Yvonne. But I have many new best friends. Dr. Yvonne is one. Yolanda's another one. So we started her book yesterday. That's going to be a process, but we're going to write her book about her family story, and then we're going to launch the book and then sell the book. So Dr. Yvonne's book is another one that I'm working on, her anthology. That's a group book, so I'm going to help her put it all together, and then do the publishing and do the editing as well. That's not me personally. That's one of my team who will do the editing, and then we get to publish the book and then sell the book. Of course, on the journey, as I always guarantee for those who pay for my services, I will guarantee to make your book a bestseller. And I'm lucky to say I say lucky, it's not lucky, but the reality is, I have 100% success rate. The worst result, I say worst result that we've got is simply, one of my authors got 5 bestsellers in the US. But I like to make my authors international bestsellers. And we're so close in other countries, in 2 other countries. We got to number 2 with the book. Alas. Most, say, apart from one client, every other client of mine is an international bestseller author. They have their gold badge on the book. More people see the book, more people want to read the book, more people, show that they love their book. That's what I love doing, right? If I can help you with that, my friends, let's talk. Mike says, you set the table and the universe sits down when the time is right. I so agree with you, Mike. I so agree with you. I said a lot of people don't want to accept that reality, but I was there. If you'd asked me 3 years ago about mindset, I would say to you, "Wait, what are you talking about?" And as my son tells me, a lot of things we can do everything without ever thinking of mindset, without ever thinking of manifesting what we want, without ever visualizing any of our dreams, Mike. I'm like, you're wrong. Yes, we can do all that, but we're not going to get to that place of true joy, that place where we tap into our God-given gift if we don't learn to apply mindset in our lives and in our business. So I say the whole mindset thing has changed what I do, how I see the world, and how I respond to the world. But I guess the bigger point is I'm trying to pass on to people what I learn about using our minds, using our intentionality in business. So that is what this room's all about. So there'll be mindset coaches who do come in the room and say, "Annie, you're wrong," and I'll say, "Yeah, okay, fine." Maybe it's how I explain things the way I see them, which is fine. I said I have no problem saying, I got that. I didn't say that properly. I didn't say that correctly. I guess if anything, those sorts of feedback always help me to learn more. And I'm always keen to learn more. I want to learn more about mindset, right? Mike said preparation is is the mind in action. I agree. It's doing the right things, right, Mike? Knowing the right things to do. And very often we don't know the right things to do. And the right things to do can involve, say, what Sean Michael calls, you know, becoming that person, right? And part of becoming that person is taking the first step. Now, once we know with clarity what we want, Mike, then we can begin to take the first step. Sometimes, say, we don't know what that first step is. So it's always useful to have the input of others to help us to work out what that first step really is. And from there, I guess our journey begins, and we can begin to thrive and begin to work towards our true goals. I could talk all day about the power of mindset because it's changed my life. And so, I guess I always pay homage and give credit to my mindset coach, Miss Donna Martin, because she's the mindset coach that helped me to learn that this topic is not, the mindset is not just something that we learn about. A lot of people will hear conversations about mindset, they will learn the principle. The real trick is the application. Is how do we apply what we are learning? So the reason I tell you about my son and his it's not mindset way of thinking is simply because he's genuinely he believes genuinely that he's right, that there's no other power. But the other times you're breaking to religion. It's about Jesus and God. I'm like, it's not about Jesus and God. Because the same principles apply everywhere. Not just in Christianity. It's a point, right? Every religion speaks the same language. It's about love. It's about intentionality. It's about caring for others, serving others. When we do all that, we can't lose, right? Dr. Lisa, welcome. How are you doing? So glad you're here. Like one day you're gonna join the stage. Well, apart from your events, but one day you join the stage, randomly and just fly. Literally join the room, join the stage, and then come and share with us. Nephew Michael, he's on his way home. Tracy, I heard him talking to his Uber driver, so he will come back once he arrives at his destination. Okay, let's talk, my friends. Let's talk. Today's our conversation is this thing called brand transgressions. Yes, I guess there's many ways I could explain this, right? And it's a lot of the research I did before I turned up today. They're all talking about crisis management. They're talking about what happens when your brand, when your business when you have bad news in your business, right? And I can understand why to a degree. If you know brand transgressions, let me put it simply, right? They're actions that violate your customers' expectations or ethical standards. I say when we damage our customers' expectations, we essentially destroy the trust that customers have in us, and we negatively affect our brand image. So, literally, we can lose reputation. We can lose customer loyalty. We can just lose customers full stop, right? Now, whether that's through people deciding not to do business with us because we have shown that we can't be trusted, or by customers going to go and tell other people, and what we call word of mouth. Tell people about you, or here's what that person, that brand is really like. See, whenever I talk branding, I'm well aware that many people think I'm not a brand. I'm just me. I'm too small to be a brand. I disagree. I disagree profoundly, right? Let me get my notebook. So the bit I disagree with is this. every business aims or hopes to be around in in years to come, right? And I said there was a time when the average big business survived for best part of 53 years, 55 years, and but that longevity is going down every day, and so now we're down to successful big businesses being around for 15 years thereabouts. My question to you, my friends, is how long is your business going to be around? Are you building a business that's going to die when you die, literally? Are you building a business that's going to leave a legacy and continue to exist long after you're gone? If you believe that you're going to live longer, your business is going to live long after we're gone, my friends, then maybe there's no point in creating a brand. I'm lying. I'm trying to fool you. Are you home already, Michael? No, Michael's still on his way. Okay, fine.
Yeah, yeah,
But you're home. Cool, that was
yeah.
quick. Have you said half an hour?
Well,
Okay, no,
I told you a bit of a fib there.
it's good. It's good. Well,
Takes me a total of 15 minutes, but I have to give you half an hour because I gotta get, settled down and all that stuff. But
I like that. I like that. I like that. Now you're here. That's the important thing, Mike. That's the important thing, right? So thank you for being here. Thanks for now coming back. Tracy was missing you, I have to say.
my singer. Oh,
Said, are you all right in
Nyazida ino
California?
nyabo.
Are you all right?
No.
Oh, honestly, I think he's all right, Tracy. I think Michael was doing just fine. He's off work, so he's free, right? My work carries on. Now, Mike, look, I hear you. So, you say trust is earned. I agree. Now, trust has to be earned, right? And sometimes that trust takes a long time to earn, Mike. But it is lost in a blink of an eye. That's why I'm having this conversation, right? People, I guess, I want people to realize that trust that we build, Mike. Without it, we haven't got a business. Without that trust, people won't buy from you. They just won't. Think of who you buy from. You have to trust them implicitly. You have to trust them to, in more ways than one, in many ways, right? And I guess when we talk about branding, like I said, many people think it's not that bad. It's not their problem. It's all our problem because your brand is a business you create. Your brand is a lot more than your logo. Your brand is, like I always say, we're only going to create a business that's profitable, that's successful, if we create a brand that's identifiable. So we can say, right, this is Michael's business, and Michael's business does what they do in this way. Think of that really. I always say this: life's not about doing things. Life is about doing things your way. What is your way? Are you relying on a stroke of luck? Are you relying on discovering your way further down the line? If you are, then things will just slow down, right? If you create a business, you want to create your unique way of doing things based on your values, your beliefs, your approach to life, your understanding of your customers' issues. So I always say Lisa is the one who is one of those people who I love how she understands her clients' issues, her target audience issues. She talks menopause, so she really does understand, and you can almost feel their pain. See, when you can feel the customer's pain, my friends, then you're almost driven to find the solution that's better than the rest, right? I think we all have that ability in us. Oh no, I've missed one of my videos, Michael. Michael, let's know what does branding mean to you?
Oh, yourself.
So,
It means you. That's what
go
it
on,
means to me.
break it down.
Basically, well, this is the thing. You're your brand because you're the one who society sees, watches, monitors, hears, listens to, looks at, and every time they want something, they come to you. It's not the picture that you present on on your website or on your car or on your shirts. No, it's you. It represents who you are, and that's what they want to be working with. If it's just something that they can connect with and they can understand at a deep level, that's that's the human connection. That's you. You have that. You're the one who's the connection. You're the one who, if they lose you, they'll go to somebody else. But they're not gonna go to your, to what do you call it? Your you know, the people that work for you, your salesperson and so on and so forth. They're not gonna go to them because you're not there. They don't represent you the way you represent you. So you're your brand, and you got to teach your salespeople to actually follow you and be more like you in order to keep the customers coming
Yes.
and
Yeah.
coming all the time, thinking about nobody else but you.
Look, I agree with you wholeheartedly. I mean, you highlight an issue there, right? And one of the issues that you highlight is when we start to grow. So our brand, it is relatively easy, Michael, for me to say, here's what any believes. And like you say, that's what people are buying, really. They're buying the NA factor. When they come to your business, America, they're buying America. They're buying the person as much as we think they're buying what we offer. But in reality, people are buying us. They're buying into us. We are the ones that they are buying into. Who we are, how we be, how we think, and how we treat people. All those things all count, right? So but then the problem, Michael, comes when we start growing. So when we start having staff, I've been there. I'm there, right? I've been there so many times, and sadly, I say sadly, I'm still learning. That's the truth, right? I employ them, I train them, I pay them, then I sack them because it turns out they're not me. I know that's been childish. I get that. I get it. I understand. I can't build a business that way. But I just cannot. I cannot stand people who don't understand my values, don't understand my my principles, the things that are important to me, the things that the way we do things at Global.Media. Yes, I can sound mad, I can sound a bit deranged. Of course I can. But no, I'm not deranged. I'm just highly driven by this issue of branding. I'm driven by the need to do Global.Media the way I want it done. Not just the way I want it done. I want it to be identifiable. When you do business with us, I want you to know that this is Global.Media. It's not another marketing agency. And there's a lot of things wrapped up in that, which many people struggle with. They just do that. They can't be me, so they try and be themselves, which is fine. I don't know. I think, look, I'm mature enough to know not everyone's going to do exactly what I do, right? But let me say something, like when it comes to branding, I think, one of the things I learned very early on is simply create that culture that you're referring to, Michael, right? That culture. We all do things the same way, with the same intentions, with the same love and care for our clients. When people don't do that, I get devastated. And that's when I literally, whatever hour, whatever day, wherever I am, wherever they are, that call that says you're fired, it follows very quickly. I said, and the reason for that is because I cannot stand by and watch people ruin my brand. I cannot stand by and watch people break my promise to my clients. I just can't. I can't do it. I've tried. God knows I've tried. See, such is my drive for the way Global.Media does things, that I have no problem admitting that I would love to have a manager who manages me, because I'm my best employee. It's such a quirky word, Michael. So literally, I would love to be left to just do the work that I exist to do, the way I know it has to be done. Again, I love someone else to give me a different idea, right? People would tell me any 80% is good enough. Technically, yes, but no. 80% is not good enough if what you're doing is disappointing my clients, if what you're doing is breaking my promises to my clients. I think you probably see this issue most in these events, right? I said, again, I've tried to get my team to host events with clients, and my clients just say, no, it's not you, Annie. I'm not having it. Either you're going to come and do the event with me, or I'm just going to go somewhere else, or not do the event at all. It's a hard one to live with. It may sound like a blessing, but I think it's a curse, because it means there's only one me. There's only X number of hours Annie has. Yet, as you were saying, Michael, people are buying me primarily. So when they don't get me, they are more than disappointed. They are annoyed. And with that goes their loyalty. With that goes their business half the time. So I mean that sincerely. The quickest way to lose customers is to guide them to my team members. I don't always blame the team members. I'm quite harsh on them. Don't get me wrong. I'm quite harsh. I told one the other day, stop losing customers. Stop losing my customers. Close the deal, do the work, and do it efficiently. Do it to your best ability. Never mind how much they're paying us or not paying us. Your love for the client has to be the priority. But not everyone sees that. Look, I guess now bringing it back to our conversation today. Woe betide the brand, the business that lets the customers down. There's so many different ways that we can let customers down. Let me stop talking for a second. So I've got several videos to show you today. Or several videos, being 3 videos. That's what I could upload, right? So let me give you an idea of what branding really is. Hint: it's not your logo. It's not your colors. It's not your website. It's not even your ads. It's not even your posts. No, your brand is what you really are deep down. Look, watch this. Say this 2 minutes or so video. As Michael tells me, any who don't like you talking all the time, because you get tired of your voice. Yes, Michael, I'll take it. I'm fine. Thankfully, my shows tend to have videos, because people I've painted the picture already. Why reinvent the wheel, I hear you say. So now watch this quick video, and then I will come back to the conversation. Let me find the video. Which one do I want to show you first? Okay, let's talk about what is branding. Here goes.
You know, as marketers, we were really intrigued by the power that these brands had over customers, and we became obsessed with these brands. You know, if you're a business leader or a marketer, you might think that being labeled a cult isn't a desirable achievement. But the profit that a cult brand enjoys from irrationally loyal fans with excessively high customer lifetime value is something that's extremely desirable. If only we could unlock that secret. Then we could teach that secret to other brands that had the same aspiration to acquire staunchly loyal customers, brands that wanted cult followings of their own. So we investigated. It didn't take us long till we found a research firm out of New York that had been studying brands like this for many years, and they'd concluded that brands with the highest level of customer loyalty, brands that dominated their categories, were all brands that enjoy incredibly high levels of customer engagement. Now, engagement is a consumer's willingness to spend not just their discretionary money, but their discretionary time with a brand for some kind of a mutual benefit. And it's because they feel an emotional attachment or a bond with the brand. We also discovered those brands with the high levels of customer engagement were in turn substantially more profitable than their peers and competitors. And they weathered economic adversity better. They were almost recession-proof. You know, more and more to us, engagement was looking like the holy grail of marketing. But what was the secret? What did cult brands do to foster such high levels of engagement in their customers? There's no mention of this in any of the textbooks that we had in our library. There were volumes written about brand loyalty theory, but relatively little on the subject of engagement. Clearly, these brands were employing some mysterious tactics that had eluded most of us other marketers. There had to be some kind of cover-up almost. I mean, so little information existed that we knew we must be onto something. So we identified several hundred cult brands from around the world, and we began to examine their behaviors. We looked for anomalies, things that they were doing that their peers and competitors were not. We started connecting the dots and fitting the pieces together. We saw patterns of behavior emerging. These were commonalities that exposed where these brands were investing the majority of their resources as opposed to where other brands were. Then we began grouping these attributes together, and slowly, 6 major areas revealed themselves to us. We realized that we'd inadvertently uncovered the black art that the world's most coveted brands practice daily to forge deep affinity and devotion. These were the secret brand-building tactics that mattered most.
I tell you, my friends, hopefully you got something from that video, right? The reality is this. Wouldn't you love to create a cult brand? I mean, who here belongs to a cult? Michael, do you belong to a cult? Michael, come back. This is an important question for you.
No.
You're lying, Michael.
Well, my own cult.
Yeah, lying. We all belong to cults, right?
I belong to my own cult. Huh?
But hear me out. Hear me out.
All right, I got you.
There's brands, there's businesses I would do business with, right? And we treat them like we're cult members. In other words, we spend time with them, and we believe what they believe wholeheartedly. We always buy from them. We trust them implicitly. Think of some of the cults, especially in the US, right? Some of you people are a perfect example of cults.
Okay, I got one.
Go on, who?
Amazing Amazon.
Yes. Okay. I'm with who is not an Amazon cult fan? We all are. I think we all are, right? Really. As Mike says, products come and go, your brand remains. And is that so true? And Amazon is one of those brands that, you know, we always go to them for everything. You know, Amazon used to be a CD shop in a garage in the 70s, if I remember rightly, right? You know, whereas now they sell pretty much everything. We still go to them. You know, imagine if your business could do that. Create people who they will sing for you. They will tell other people about you. They evangelize about you. They bring you customers, their friends, their families. They bring, you know, you are the heart of their very existence, especially at least when it comes to what you do and how you can serve them and how you can meet their needs, right? You know, I think that we're very, well, we are too lackadaisical. As Mike says, you know, the people are not buying the products. No, they're not buying your service. They're buying you and how you do what you do.
I
You
got
know,
another one, Annie. I got
go
another
for
one.
it. Go for it.
Netflix.
There's thousands of TV channels. Michael insists on watching Netflix. You know, I don't watch Netflix. I don't know. I pay for it every month. My wife and my son might watch it sometimes. I've never watched it. I've never sat down with it. But I've got my own course channels. And I got the channels that give me what I want, which is real life whodunit programs, right? Real life murder programs, crime programs, things like that.
You never talk about those channels. What are they?
Of course I don't. This Discovery is one of those. And Discovery has many such channels. And I've got an Apple now. Apple, what's it called? Apple Fire. You know, and I have an Apple Fire stick, which has hundreds of channels. Again, that I can find. There's something called Freeview, something like that, which has a lot of channels, and it's, you know, it's on when I watch TV at night. You know, so Mike talks about Apple as a perfect example of, you know, a cult brand. You know, but Mike said he lost his engagement, failing miserably to meet his needs as an Apple evangelist. You know, but it is the evangelism when it comes to branding, I think we can all cultivate. You know, and like I say, you know, this conversation about brand transgressions, it usually goes down the road of how do we save ourselves once we screw up. I guess I don't want to go down that end. I'm not into crisis management. I'd rather avoid the crisis in the first place, right? And that's what I want to talk about today, really. How do we avoid that crisis? How do we avoid breaking our customers' trust? What does breaking our customers' trust even sound like? What's it look like? You know, I don't think many of us really know what it looks like. Welcome, Cyrus. I'm moving my camera around. Welcome, Cyrus. How you doing? I know Cyrus was at work. Hopefully he's finished work now. 11 o'clock is a lot, so it's late in the day, Cyrus. When you can join us, my friends, and to do it on mute, I'd love to hear your thoughts.
Hello. How's it going?
I'm all right, mate. Lachelle, welcome. Lachelle said, I believe loyalty programs have increased success.
What's up, Phenomenal? How are you doing?
Hey, Mike.
Hooligans. Now, Lachelle, I agree with you.
Drop Mike.
Nah, look, I agree with Lachelle.
That's one hell of an intro, Phenomenal.
Stop hijacking my show, both of you. Honestly, I'll come to you in a second, Cyrus, because I know you're the branding guy. I mean, you've written a branding book. What? Branding book. So, you know, I think that Mike's point is an important one to bear in mind. You know, even corporate brands can lose people. Think of how easy it is for us to lose people. You know, before we came on, I was talking to someone and they were berating me for offering my clients options, which is, I think, it's probably fair enough. But you have to realize your promise to me as the contractor, as the person who's contracting you, right? You know, that's important, and it doesn't take much for us, for our friends, for our clients. Mike, I'm going to send you the link right now. The link is on the event page. If anyone's wondering, you can copy and paste the link from here. I just put up. I'll DM you the link privately, Mike. Find the LinkedIn page. We can lose people very easily as businesses, especially if we don't bother to create the brand in the first place, because we don't know, and we don't make any promises. As I challenge anyone here today to specify, write down your promise to your clients. Mike, I just sent you the link. I don't know why it suddenly come back. You sent me the question again. So StreamYard link. Let me try and do it properly. Cyrus, talk to me. You're the branding guy. Where does branding fit in our world, Cyrus? How important is it? What should we be doing? Cyrus?
Wherever you are, based. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you now.
Yeah, can you hear? Yeah, good morning,
Yeah.
good afternoon, good evening, everybody, wherever you are based. Hi, Michael, and hi, Annie, and hi, everybody, in this beautiful live event. Regarding branding, what I've realized about branding is that I do not know anything about it. That's what I've learned about it. I have learned a few things around branding, and the more I study it, the more I learn about it, the more I figure out I need to learn more. That's the reason why I'm constantly learning. I'm learning about it every day. The moment you stop learning about branding, it's the moment that your brand stops being successful. So, what do I mean by that? People change, and that's the reason why brands have to change as well. The biggest danger for a brand is that people will leave it behind, because people are moving forward, society is moving forward, and if a brand has been loyal to them, they will be loyal back to that brand, and they will carry that brand forward. And my question to you guys is, you don't have to answer it, just answer it to yourself. My question is this society carrying your brand forward with them, or are they leaving it behind? Is your brand committing the four cardinal sins, which I'm going to be talking about in a few moments, or is your brand changing the world? So there are two major types of brands. I'm going to let Annie have a conversation with the room and welcome more people, and then I'll come back to Mike and carry on this conversation. It is exciting.
Meeting myself. This is an exciting conversation for those who get it and those who want to do the work to know. So I think it's a courage thing to create a brand, right? It's a courage thing to say this is how we do things here, and rather just this is how we do things, And look, part of it is your name. Say when we talk about American Supermom, we know what that means, right? I use that as a segue into what can go wrong. What can we do now? How do we break our customers' trust? Now, let me tell you, America's Supermom, she's a supermom number one. She really is. She turned up tomorrow, started spouting about how to chastise kids, corporal punishment. We'll be like, Lachelle, what's happened to you? We're way off. Whatever you say anymore after that, Lachelle, we're gone, right? I think, and if you watch her shows, which I've watched her shows on her TV channel. Lachelle is literally everyone's mom. She's that person everyone can talk to. And she's always the wise one in the room, really. And I'm not saying there's other people who are not, maybe not as smart, but she's always the wise one. I'm saying her brand has an identity. Lachelle doesn't push things on you. Lachelle actually inform you. She'll tell you what she does if you ask her, especially if you ask her, right? But ultimately, she's that person. She's that supermom who does what supermom does. And so when you go to Lachelle's show, you know you're in Lachelle's show. All her, even her clients create the same ambience, the same vibe of being that wise person, and also the person who listens. I could carry on with the show. I'm saying she's creating a brand. She created a brand which It's identifying. If you connect with her and look into what she does, you see there's telltale signs. It's Lachelle. There's many other people who create businesses and maybe even have huge followings, but you can't. They have no identity. Don't be that person. With no creating identity. Mike, how are you doing? I'm glad you're ex-Apple evangelist. They must have really pissed you off, Mike. They must have really done you, right?
I want to tell you this story because it fits in exactly what you're talking about, brand transgressions. So I had well over $10,000 worth of Apple gear. I had a Mac Pro at the time that was their top of the line product. Spent about $7,000 on that. And this is central to the story, but I also had a MacBook Pro, a Mac Mini, multiple iPods, an iPad, and an iPhone. And one of the things for me about Apple was that they did hardware and software, particularly the software, very well, and they still do. But part of what happened to me was with the Mac Pro, I bought it. It was a 64-bit machine. It had quad Xeon processors, but would operate at 32-bit at the time. Then then they came out with a version of the OS only like 6 months later, and it ran at 64-bit. So Steve was still alive back then, and I wrote to Steve and I said, "Dude, what's going on?" Now he didn't know me from Adam, and but again, this story, I'm like a pyramid now because this story in the negative sense goes on forever. And you had already mentioned, Annie, when it can take years to build your brand and seconds to lose it. And he certainly lost it, or well, Apple lost it for me because the net of all of this was they wouldn't do anything for me. So here I am, literally having all of this Apple equipment, been pitching Apple for years, took my Mac Pro to Uganda. I was a photographer there and I was processing my photos digitally on my MacBook Pro. So kudos to it for holding up for the trip. But they've lost, for life pretty much. They've lost me as not just an evangelist, but as a customer. And I also would say there's the delta between the brand of me, which we all have, and then extending that brand into the company culture. And it sounds to me like that's maybe something you're struggling with is, how do I get the brand of any to expand past any into the culture and the people that work for them? Because to your point, at some point, and there's a good book on this called Good to Great, and it talks about succession, how you pass the torch, so to speak, typically from the founder to maybe a CEO that's more used to running an organization, because there's different skill sets. But Apple lost me not only as an evangelist, but as a customer.
And I hear you. I mean, and that it is their loss. I think, it's easy to underestimate what a cult following looks like. And Mike is a perfect cult following that I'm sure we all want to have. Mike knows there's other IT brands, other computer brands out there. There's many who got devices that can do exactly what he wants, but he chose to spend all his money with Apple because of that love. And Apple, I would say, well, most of us Apple users, I've got an iMac mic that I take everywhere. When I show up and they're like, "What's that?" I'm like, "It's my baby." I take it everywhere, right? And Apple users are evangelists. They really are. We preach about it and we tell everyone about it. Anyone who will listen anywhere, right? Because such is our love for our belief in the value of the product, the quality of the service. which is what Mike is saying, obviously he didn't get. You know, I mean, that sort of talk, you see, that should scare us, right? Because if people are doing that about our businesses, our brands, our service, we're in trouble. That's a brand transgression right there, Mike. A lot of people think, you know, they think of the big companies. I think of Boeing. You know, Boeing one day was all about the safest planes ever, safest planes on earth, and more. Right? Then they got taken over. Or they went to merger with into, and I guess in a flight, another army flight company, McDonald's, something Douglas. I forgot what they called.
McDonnell Douglas.
That's right. So they went into business with them. Now, how many crashes have we seen from Boeing in the last 5 years? A lot. There's one recently in India, right? You know, that's what happens when you forget your brand promise. That's what happens when you switch, and your customers really do see, and they think they've changed. I don't love them anymore. I can't trust them. So, but no, look, let's not think about the big companies. Chirito, I see you. Glad you're here. Welcome. I don't know who LinkedIn user is. LinkedIn user said hello everyone. Hello Annie. I don't know whether it's Christiana. I could try and find out, right?
I got something to say, Annie, when you're done.
Christiana, welcome, Christiana. Glad you're here. Go, Mike. Go, Michael.
Mike, I like what you said, and that touches me, because really, in reality, I would go buy a piece of crap computer as long as the customer service was phenomenal. If I bring my computer there and I have great service, and they treat me like as if I'm the king of the world, oh my gosh, there is no way you can tell me I am not gonna go back there. I'm gonna go back there because I'm gonna have to talk to them, relay my information, tell them what the issue is, and let them relay to me that, hey, we can fix this. And would you like this? And would you like to sit down here? It's going to cost you so much. And it's like, okay, so long as the problem is fixed and, you guys can take care of it. And then they just treat me nice. If I go to Apple,
there's a problem,
Apple
Mark.
is just so cold when it comes to customer service.
No. I think, look, there's...
That's my experience with them.
I hear you. Okay, I think the first part of branding is delivery, right? Like I said, I don't carry my iMac around for fun. I carry it because when my computer broke down last summer, September-ish, right? I tried using Windows. I tried using 5 different laptops and a computer. You know what, Mike? None of them could do what my Mac does. That's why I'm evangelical about Apple products. They're a different class, different league completely. They're a different beast to what
we're going to have an intervention.
Anyone about that?
We need to have an intervention, Mike.
We have to.
Oh, just for clarity, I'm going to agree and then disagree with any. There is some very awesome software, and to me, that's what really brought me to Apple. Was the Pages was just off the charts good as far as desktop publishing. Anything to do with graphics, because I've done graphic arts, and I've done web design, and I've done a lot of photography. So they had some very good applications for that, and even setting up. I mean, anyone knows something about this. Setting up, publishing stuff. It again, that's their jam, or was their jam. But where I'm gonna disagree is that that Steve was all about what he called end-to-end control. So that was, he wouldn't allow that software on other hardware. I think that, to be honest, was probably a huge mistake, but that's what he did. And he was adamant about that. That was also something that bugged me, though, because Apple Care is only good for 3 years. You can't extend it. I just bought an $8,000 machine with, X amount of, terabyte drives, and, it's a meaty machine that, and he needs to do his publishing. But he can only get support from Apple anyway for 3 years, as far as I know. So that was at least, from a personal. I don't know if you can do it as an enterprise customer. I don't know if you can extend that, but even if you can, they, they keep on pushing you to the next release of hardware and software. And again, I understand and they're making great profits. We'll see what happens if they have to bring some of that on shore. But one of the biggest things for me, and I grew up in, I did for a number of years, I did customer service. So I have very high expectations of customer service. And like I said, when I went through this multiple times, I didn't tell you the finishing story. I went to the Genius Bar and I said, "Can you guys do anything?" And this gets a little complicated, but I could go out on the internet, download some software, put it on a USB, and actually boot around Apple's EFI, is equivalent to their BIOS, and I could actually boot that iOS, the Apple OS. But I'm like, are you kidding me? That I can't, I just spent $7,000. 6 months later, you can't do anything for me. And their answer was, go buy another unit. And that's when I said, okay, you guys realize I have well over, $10,000 worth of Apple equipment. You lost me as a customer. That should have meant something. Now, if not to, the muckety muck, certainly the local folks. So anyway, yeah. And I'm sorry, but I also don't feel that Tim, our good buddy Tim, is quite carrying the same, brand as Steve did.
Again, you're making the points I think we need to bear in mind, Mike. In that it's the small things that are transgressions. You may think, well, how can I possibly really upset my customers that they lose trust to me? As Mike is saying, this issue of when it's not you, when it's not Steve Jobs, when it's not you doing what you're doing for your clients, is such a fine line to for your customers to think they've been shortchanged. And the service part is one part for sure. I know you mentioned the book, the how to succession and getting your team to be, but it's the hardest job in the world, Mike. God knows I've tried, right? There was a day when I thought, write the handbooks. I wrote the handbooks. And then the staff will come along. Look, I've had a couple of good staff. They've lasted years, right? And I say, one lasted a good 2.5 years. The other one lasted about 1.5 years, right? And they follow the handbook. They worked. But everyone, actually, people have this tendency, Mike, to want to take shortcuts. They think they're trying to fob you off that they're doing things more efficient. They're doing things in a different way, but it's the same result. It's not. Be very wary of what your customer feels. It's end-to-end service. It's so important. It really it's crucial. So it's again, a lot of us will think this bit is working. What we call touch points, Mike. They think this touch point is working, whether that's at the point of sale, whether that's the returns. Like I've seen some of that Amazon has many different touch points if you think about it, right? But what people don't think about is the cumulative experience that customers have. What's it like doing business with you really from beginning to end? Not just when things go wrong, not just when things are going right, not just when they come to pay, not just when they want something. You know, again, the video I showed talked about engagement being at the heart of brand. Those who can truly get their customers talking to them is key these days. You know, and how many people really are talking to the customers in a way that we have to, in a way that is personal? That's a question. Look, when I said, you know, I don't want us to all leave here thinking the world is, we're doomed. I think there's a stage in business, my friends, where you're allowed to screw up. You're allowed to, you know, to be less than. You're allowed to be new almost. Let me show you what that looks like. You know, I guess, you know, we call it the survival stage in business and climbing that cringe mountain. So Michael, you know, give me a minute and a half. I'll show you what the cringe mountain looks like. So don't worry all the way through. But if you're past the cringe mountain, then you have different criteria. Let me show you what cringe mountain looks like.
Thing to know is that you need to be prepared to climb the cringe mountain, and often in public. When you're starting a business, essentially a public one where your friends and family can see your work, you have to climb something called the cringe mountain. And the cringe mountain is brutal because you're not climbing it alone, you're climbing it while everyone watches. And at the start, when you're right at the bottom, it can be very embarrassing. You're clumsy, you're unsure, your work is not great because you're learning in public and everyone can see it. And this is the stage where the most judgment happens. You can feel people criticizing it, laughing about it silently, most likely, but you can still feel it. And it's only when you start climbing that mountain and getting towards the top that people's view can completely change. You could be doing the exact same thing, but now instead of being laughed at or criticized, you're now applauded. The hardest is the climb because you're constantly battling an inside voice with external noise. And even a tiny seed of doubt at this point can throw you off track. So I've already gone through this, so here's what I'd recommend. Firstly, create a really small support circle of people who get it. Even if they're online friends or very close family, there's only a few people that you really need to open up to here. Secondly, focus on serving one person well rather than pleasing everyone. You can never please everyone. And third, save screenshots of the kind comments that you get early on your journey and always revisit them daily, weekly, however often you need to remember why you're doing it. And I wanted to add here that if you can keep showing up while it's awkward, while it's cringy, while no one gets it, you can build a kind of confidence that no one can take away from you. Because once you do it once, you realize that you can do it over and over again. The second thing to look out for at this level is to brace yourself for.
Yeah, ignore the second thing, the third thing. I say ignore it. I know what they are, but I ain't got time to show it to everyone, right? You know, look, we all climb that cringe mountain. You know, anyone who's been in business long enough knows what that feels like. You know, and maybe for some of us who are still there, you know, I'd say every day, like Cyrus says, is a learning experience. You know, I know I still screw up. I screw up. Yes, I do. Okay, fine. I'll say that loud and clear. You know, alas, I defend myself and say something, right? Welcome, Crystal. You know, I will say this about my screw ups. My screw ups are down to process, Mike. My systems don't work the way I expect them to work, or my system, or I don't do what I know I should do. You know, taking shortcuts, eliminating steps in my process. Let's use publishing as a perfect example, right? You know, again, I will thank Michelle Ramos. You know, I'm sure she was on YouTube just now. You know, she's like, when you get a client, make sure you take them through the onboarding form. So that's to collect information about who they are, what they are, you know, and making sure they have the basics. My coach would tell me, build them at the beginning, don't just wait till the end. Don't trust them, build them. I'm like, no, I trust them. I love my clients. Of course, we'll become friends, right? You know, so there are times when I have authors who don't have clarity about their book, for example. They think I'm a miracle worker, which I am. They think I'm just going to create a book that they want. I'm saying to them, no, it doesn't work like that. But sometimes I learned that lesson towards the end. Alas, I've learned to build systems and my systems involved constant, almost never-ending author review of our drafts. Right? Oh, has my screen frozen? I think it has. But you can still hear. Can you still hear me, Mike? Oh,
Yes, I can still hear you.
I'll keep talking, and then when Cyrus or you or Cyrus talk next, I will restart my computer. Right? I say, but literally, I say I make mistakes. I say I make mistakes. The book is not what the author wants, and I can be. For a moment, I'm slightly peeved and annoyed, but I realize it's not the author really. It's my process that hasn't been diligently followed. And I get over it. I learn so. And each time I learn, stick to your process, and stick to your process. Just stick to your process. At the same time, I'm aware that one of my promises to my clients is that my service is easy to use. So, if we don't do all the paperwork, if we don't dot all the I's and cross the T's, I still, I want to publish your book more than anything in the world, right? And I'll give you the book, but I will create the book you want. Even if that means me starting again. Now I know your real thoughts, your real vision, your real idea, your real want for your book to look like. I'm saying, but now many of us, I guess, we make little mistakes. We'll make mistakes, full stop, right? And when we do, part of our brand promise has to be how we fix those mistakes. I fix mistakes at my cost and my time, and I use that to learn for next time. Believe it or not, that doesn't destroy my business. Much like the climbing the cringe mountain does not destroy your business. It's all about what you promise your clients along the lines of, when things go wrong, here's what happens. There's something Mike said earlier, and I think the price thing is a weird one, right? I've always asked Mike and Cyrus, I've always asked a question. Why do we give new customers the best price? That's ludicrous. I give my loyal customers the best price, always. Because that loyalty is what I'm really buying from them, if that makes sense, right? That's what I really need them for. I need them to be loyal. When people are loyal, why do I want to charge them more? They're going to come back with more purchases anyway, what we call lifetime value, right? Those are the ones I think we should protect. But many brands, they piss customers off by giving new customers the best deals, the best products. No. That's my thought anyway. Cyrus, talk to us. Tell us about these 4 steps you got in mind. I'd love to hear, these 4 elements. Go for it.
Sure. Yeah, thank you. I was gonna say, there is 4 things that a brand can do that they shouldn't, which results in their demise. So you could be a coach, you could be an expert in anything, right? But there are 8 billion people out there, and once people lose that trust, they will move on to the next person. So when it comes to branding, please always remember, you are replaceable very easily. Perhaps by tomorrow, before breakfast, someone can find a replacement for you, whether at work or on a professional capacity, like on a one-to-one basis, like a client-to-client basis. They will find a replacement for you. If there's a big if there, if they find out you have done one of these 4 things, right? That's when the customer bails, right? Why do I call it customer? Why am I saying it that way? Bails, because broken promises inconsistency, arrogance, or should I say, broken promises, arrogance, inconsistency, and loss of relevance. If you commit one of these four, you will have committed one of the cardinal sins in branding, right? So how does it work? Broken promises. So you make a promise and say to your customers that you will deliver the work in 12 days. Now, there are unforeseen circumstances, yes, but you have to, if it takes 18 days, just tell them 18 days from the get-go. Don't tell them 12 days. And if you feel there are unforeseen circumstances that's going to affect your delivery date or due date, please say it at the very beginning. That people can't forgive broken promises. They can forgive lateness if they know about it in advance and they feel, oh, that's going to take a long while. So they can forgive that if you tell them in advance. Okay, you would forgive that if someone tells you that in advance, right? So that's broken promises. Make sure, even if it's at the cost of losing a customer, tell them from the get-go, because later you will lose your customer and your reputation. That's a double loss, isn't it? So that's broken promises. The next one is arrogance and ignoring feedback. So what does that mean? That means, let me give you an example. I have a friend of 20 years, and he has a business in Leeds. It's like an hour away from Manchester. So an hour and something. So I went to his warehouse, and I sat at his computer, and he asked for advice, and I sat down with him and I told him about branding, etc., etc. I saw a lot of red stickers in front of his. He has an Amazon business. In front of the customers' names, I saw a lot of red stickers. I was like, "What's that? What's this? What's that?" And he said, "Oh, it's all right. It's before Christmas. I had to go to Turkey on holiday, and I came back a little bit late. And these are the customers complaining." I said, "So what are you going to do with that?" And he said, "Well, never mind." So he told me in my face. He had invited me for branding, right? For branding advice. He told me in my face that he had ignored those feedbacks. I said, "Can I read the feedbacks?" And he said, yeah, just fill your boots. Just read them. So I read them, and they were complaining and complaining. Some of them were asking if it would be okay if they go on holiday themselves. Otherwise, they would have to stay for receiving the item. So that told me there were people who stayed home, didn't go on holiday, awaiting the items that he never sent them. And he said to me, I'll give him a discount later. I said, well, there's not going to be any later. And a few months after that, he went out of business, and he's in Canada now. So he like abandoned everything, just abandoned the business and went to Canada. And he was moaning and complaining about the fact that his customers were mistreating him. So he wasn't sat at the wheel anymore. He wasn't driving the business anymore. He had turned into a crash test dummy, right? So he would feel just the impact. He wasn't driving anymore. So when you betray your customers will drop you. That's what happens. And the next one, so yeah, please never ever ignore the feedback, even if it's one, because back in the day there was this famous saying, a happy customer talks to 3 people, unhappy customer talks to 30 people. Things have changed now. People will leave reviews online, good or bad, and they will stay forever, for eternity. The next one is loss of relevance. So please find out what is it your customers want, and create the item just like they want it, not just like you want them to have it. Just create it just like they want it. So if you creating a software and your customers want to be able to customize the control panel, please give them the customizable control panel. Give them a few themes. Make it purple, make it yellow, make it black, make it day, make it night version, day version. You know, just like some apps do, right? Why do you think they do it? That costs money, you know. So why do you think that Apple phone that Mike was talking about gives you the night version, the day version? Why? Because customizability is something that people love and pay for, right? So, and the final one is never ever. This is not one of the four ones that I'm going to say that, right? So never ever be moaning about the business, okay? Never ever tell your customers it's your fault, or tell yourself it's the customer's fault. It's never the customer's fault. You're there to satisfy a need, and customers are there to satisfy what you want, right? So if you give people what they need, they will give you what you want. It's a trade in branding, trust me. So it's a give and take in branding. You give them what they need, they give you what you want. Okay, they give you the lifestyle that you want, they give you the freedom that you want. Okay, take good care of them, they will take good care of you. Okay, yeah, thank you so much.
Great insights there. You know, Mike, you're putting comments in the private chat. I've looked at them, right? Lots of relevance you mentioned as well, as Sarah just did, on the fastest ways to kill your business, for sure. And your pricing issue is key. Your pricing issue is key, especially for loss leading. And you should have loyalty, so rewards pricing. I agree. Now, Sarah said the amazing insights. Like, it is the thing about how easy it is. Now, so, you mentioned, of course, not disappearing and not breaking our promises. That's what transgressions are, right? When as a whole combined, breaking our promises is, God help you is what I say, right? Even God probably won't help you because the customer's already gone.
Well, it could be implied promise too, like with Apple, for instance. I don't know, Cyrus, if you remember, but there was a gentleman, I think, that was head of Pepsi that took over. The board kind of booted Steve out. And long story short, when Steve came back in, one of the things he did is he actually gave the iMacs different colors. Back to your issue about customability. They were not technically, like, the hardware wasn't technically better, but it was cool. It was different. And so Steve knew marketing. But what I think what I'm saying, and I think what they've lost, it's not relevancy per se, but they've lost that loving feeling of forward thinking. Apple did not come out with a smartphone, but they made it cool. And they're still selling them. But there's nothing that's really replaced the iPhone, for instance, in my opinion. We'll see. We'll see what happens. I just haven't seen anything really cool come out of Apple, and it's not just that I was upset at them. Again, if I had to do what Any's doing, I would probably have a Mac because of the publishing. But or if I was doing a lot of photography and needed or typesetting, again, that's where Apple shines in their software. But if I don't, and if I need, something like, one of the things I want to do pretty short here is to be able to run AI models locally on my computer. Well, I need some pretty high-end chips for that. Right now, those chips happen to be graphics. The other thing, by the way, Annie, is I had a really hot graphics card that I had done some homework and I needed to upgrade. It's a long story, but I had to upgrade the firmware in order to fit it in my Mac Pro, and Apple made that very hard. So again, they don't want you really fooling with the hardware. But I think where maybe they lost, I personally think that if they would have allowed to keep the software and keep on building the hardware, but allow particularly people like me or enthusiasts or whatever to put their OS and put their particularly their software on other hardware, I think I don't know. I think they would still be, in my opinion, a force. Now, they were never the same as Windows because it's actually a good question. I don't know why. I don't think they focused on quote unquote enterprise business. And I think if Steve would have, I think he went after education. And again, the whole graphics, printing, that was his sector. And he still, well, Apple still kind of owns that. But I really haven't seen them. So they've lost that almost indescribable thing in branding, that they've lost that loving feeling.
No, look, I totally agree with you. Again, even as an Apple evangelist, I know the things you're saying, I see as well, Mike. Say, I have a Mac, and then I try to upgrade the operating system. You can't do that, as you said. They won't let you, right? And then suddenly, Apple begins to tell me, my device begins to tell me, you can't do that because you can't download the software because you haven't got the latest Apple operating system. So what am I meant to do? This came to a head when I paid for Office. Remember the days when Office used to be on disk, Mike? You could buy Office once and then you had everything for years. No, not anymore. Microsoft, they now insist that we have subscriptions. So I bought my subscription for the year. They took my money, and then they said suddenly when I tried to install it on my Mac, he said, no, it's too old. Yeah, I need a new operating system. And so those little things, they're little things, but they're big things. And so but chances are I'll probably buy another Mac. Because all the things you said, Mike, I need a fast processor for the graphics for the videos that I do for my book publishing, and also for the posts I do for my clients, right? The Windows just can't handle that sort of fast processing of graphic content. So video content is way behind. But then I think all computer brands have a problem where the memory we have is stuck. It's the same. They're still doing 256, 512 megabytes, 1 gig, whereas our media files these days are huge. I always say I've got 3 external drives. I send it to 1 terabyte drives because the data requirements these days are so big. But this little, I think maybe another thing on your list, Sarah, should be or could be, we have to carry on improving, like you mentioned. Our customers needs change. We must carry on adapting, right? Otherwise, we will be left behind. Someone else will bring a new solution that we don't offer, and that'll be a problem. Go on, Mike.
Oh, I was going to say, in that respect, it's loss of relevance, right? Because if you can't do the thing that you need to do to stay in business, you're going to have to find another solution. And if that another solution is another, and I agree with you 100%. But now I was just going to offer, and things are moving a little fast, so we'll see where this goes. But there are, for lack of a better word, there are chips out there that are both the memory and the CPU. And now you have something called a TPU that's specific to AI for Google. So we'll see how all this shakes out. But if Apple or any other vendor is not keeping up to stay relevant to the needs, whatever it is. One of my other issues was, to your point, I mean, any PC, and I build my own PCs, by the way, any. So, if I need more memory, I go out and put more memory in it. If I need, like the machine I'm on right now, I converted from an old, spin drive to a SSD, and it operates and gave life to it for another couple years. And my point in all this is, I think a lot of this is it gets back to this whole thing of, are you paying attention to your customers' needs? Because they came to you because they needed something and you fulfilled that need. And if you can't stay on top of that and provide that, you're in danger of losing your business.
Again, I totally agree with you on that one. It is needs change, and solutions can evolve. They have to. I think we have to evolve. Well, a lot of
That's
people.
where that's my
Yeah,
cue
Mike,
right there.
please jump
Jump
in.
in. I'll be right behind Mike there, because what he said is also in line with what you were talking about with respect to you passing on the your attributes to your employees. And I was thinking in particular where you talked about them not being able to service your needs. And I was thinking, and you talked about the handbook. I was like, in that handbook, does it talk about them being you being their customer?
Mm,
You're their customer,
mm,
because they're kind of make them think about that for a bit. You're not their employer, you're
mm.
actually their customer,
Yeah,
because you're paying them for a
mm,
service because you need it,
yeah,
right? And if
yeah,
they treat you right by treating your customers right, then you'll get paid accordingly, right?
yeah. No, we'll make money, Michael. We know if they treat the
Yeah.
customer right, then
Mm.
we'll win. They get paid more. We generate more revenue. They get paid more. They're happier. The customers are happier and happy to pay more.
Mm. I
You
was
know,
thinking that if that quirk was in there, in that handbook, so that they understood their relevance, you're not just an employee, you're actually a customer, and you're their biggest customer. So they need to come to you, they need to make you happy. They should
yeah,
do all they possibly can to make you happy. And it's what you were talking about earlier, talking to your customers, making sure that they're happy, finding out a little bit more about them. All these relationships that you build with a customer is a very positive thing, and that's what keeps you around.
I
And
agree. I
and and
agree.
I and Mike is actually what do you call it, talking about that in a sense and
Mm,
relaying that to us. This is what your most important person is, the customer, and the need to provide them with with a product or service or what they need is
mm.
so on point. And but that can also go towards you in terms of you being the employer and the employee relationship. The employee is someone you hire, but they should also understand that you're their customer, and because you're their customer, your biggest customer, they should keep you happy by keeping the customers happy that you have coming in and going out of your service. So yeah,
Uh,
it's kind of convoluted, but
no,
I
no,
think
no.
that's how it's supposed to work.
It makes perfect sense, right? It makes perfect sense. I guess no, I didn't specify that I was a customer. I think when in business we're hoping that the employees we get, and hopefully the ones we choose, whether it's through interview or whatever, we choose the right people. Basically, we hope we do. We rarely do, if ever. That's the problem we have. We hope and pray that they would have the entrepreneurial spirit, Michael. So very few do. And yes, I accept my limitations, both on the recruitment side and also in creating the evangelical work, team that I need in that sense, right? Because I think, unless we're thinking on the same thing, unless we have the same values, unless
Mm-hmm.
we have principles, we're doomed. It takes one person to break the mindset that we need, the collective mindset,
Collective mindset, yeah.
the rotten apple
Become like
syndrome.
the Borg.
Yeah, and the rotten apple syndrome does exist, Michael. In that it takes one bad apple to ruin the whole, the whole top of apples that we have. And in business, guarding against that is so hard. It's not. I
Yeah.
just find it very hard. But now my solution
I know you
today.
can do it, Annie, though. You can make
Yeah,
every effort to
I'll do it.
assimilate them.
I'll do it. I say no. What I've learned is simply that in my younger days, I wrote and thought a lot about alternatives to having staff in the way that we do. The traditional way. You employ them, you pay their wages, you pay all their overheads. Now, overheads, such as the taxes, you pay X, Y, Z. So now we all know, as a psychologist and business psychologist, we're all trying to find ways, alternatives that would work. I dare say I'm there now. Saying my team now they're full of contractors who do stuff that I can't do myself, but what the customer needs. I still say we're a one-stop shop. Sorry. Yeah, but it's a seamless process. It's a seamless service from my end. That's what the customer should see as well. So of course, things like this, Michael, events like this, it's like I say, it's where I've effectively dug my own grave or got my own noose, because it's very hard to say to a customer, "Oh, you're not gonna get me. You're gonna get one of my team," and they're like, "It's not you." I'm like, "I know it's not. I just told you it's not me." But you can trust them. They're as good and passionate as I am. They're like, "No, no." So I think some of these come down to your business design, Michael. How have you designed your service to run? I wish I'd been smarter to design a service that could run without me. And do I really? I do, but I don't. Because I like to put things right. I like to do things properly.
If you want your business to survive without you, you need to.
Yes, but I guess for now, I am willing to wear the hat and carry the cross, so to speak. It is like a curse. But let's go back to Cyrus's things that we can do to transgress, to ruin our trust. Cyrus mentioned feedback, and this is so important, Cyrus. A lot of people, like I said, they get agitated, annoyed, discombobulated is what that we'll call it. That's that weird word, right? They get thrown when customers give them feedback that's not glowing. And I agree with you, Cyrus. How we take feedback, definitely not ignoring it. How we embrace it. It's often the only way we can give the customer what they really want, which is not what we are just giving them. There's a difference between what we give them what they really want. Feedback is key. I say that I don't mind being told you got that wrong, because like I say, I'll learn my lesson when there's lesson to learn. But ultimately, I'm more than happy to redo, to remake, to improve, to do better, to give the customer that joy that they're really paying us for. But I think there's other things. Of course, I know there's a couple more you mentioned, Sarah. So they're giving our clients the personal choice, or the personal solution, the personalized solution that they really want, what they really want. It's about understanding that. How many companies will say to you, how many people on LinkedIn, for example, will say to you, "Well, I'm not really there to serve my customers' needs. I'm just there to provide this service." Even though they want it the way it is, or they can go somewhere else, and they will go somewhere else. That's the thing. That's the truth. That's how it works. So a lot of us lose customers because we don't give them that personalized service. And of course, your point about that the customer is always right, Cyrus. It's true. The customer is probably never right. I know what I just said, right? But you don't tell them that. You don't treat them that way. You embrace them, and like a loving friend, you listen to what their problem is, what they are unhappy with. and then you work out a way to do what they want, what they really want, what's going to leave them delighted.
Penny, you just said something very key, and I've phrased it this way. Sometimes the best answer to a customer or a customer's issue is no. Meaning, and hear me out, no, not in that way. Let's talk. First of all, I think I understand what you're after, but what you're trying to go. In other words, you're providing sort of a consultative approach to their problem, and then meet. Obviously, at the net result is to meet their needs, but sometimes they can kind of be going down a rabbit hole or a path that you've already is not going to provide the solution that they need, right? So sometimes, I'm just saying, sometimes it takes that consultative approach rather than just saying yes or no, sir, 3 bags full.
Again, I agree with you entirely. We often know what's not right for the client. It's how we frame it, Mike. That's what you're saying, and also, again, I think our intention matters. Dr. Melissa Houston, welcome. So glad you're here. I'll send you the link. Dr. Marcia, thank you for joining us as well. Henry, thank you for being here. Always appreciate you. Dr. Marcia, let me create a new LinkedIn tab. Yeah, but again, there's so many little things that we can do to transgress. I do want to talk a bit about even on LinkedIn. Many people would think, only market on LinkedIn. What can go wrong? What can go wrong? How can I transgress? What can I do to really upset my customers and potential customers? Okay, so what can go wrong on LinkedIn? Where do we go wrong on LinkedIn or any social media platform, for that matter, right? I'll tell you where we go wrong. The first thing that we can do is what I call a dodgy post. A post that's not aligned to our brand promise, a post that's not aligned to who we say we are. Start there. People can see a post and think, I thought I could trust that person. I could trust any, but look what he's saying. Look what he's posting. Yeah, I've seen this. I've seen it happen to other people. It's another pitfall that we can easily break our customers' trust is the comments we make. Yeah, so on those two, the posts and comments. A common experience. I don't know whether you've seen it yourselves, my friends on stage, my friends in the audience, is the argument in public. Someone takes a shot at you, you're obliged to respond, or are you? Are you really? And now you're having a public conversation, a public argument with someone, and you're being mean, maybe. That can erode trust very quickly because suddenly it paints a different picture of who you are, right? So another way that we can break trust on here is who we associate with. Again, it's often a choice we make, right? Some people will say, right, you can't tell me who to be friends with. No, you can't. But there are some people, if they are of a certain viewpoint, of a certain way of being that doesn't align with. Let me give you a simple example. If you're a vegan and you are associating with meat companies, or someone who is heavily into, what can I think, shooting and gaming, doing that, shooting for game, shooting animals. People will rightly question, are you who they think you are? And at best of times, you're probably not, right? Again, another way that I'd say that will break trust on here, very simply, is by not defining what our brand is. Not many people actually dare to define what a brand really is. I think it's so important to think bigger and think, we're here for a reason. Here's like I can't say enough. Maybe you're gonna go out of business next year, but maybe you won't, right? And it's important to say you won't because you have a clear brand, a clear promise to your clients. And that promise is explicit and it fits with what your customers want, what your customers need, as been said already, right? If you don't make the promise, people will rightly wonder, can I really trust them? Can I really do business with them? That's often where people go wrong. That's often where we struggle to get the customers we want in the first place. Dr. Marcia, welcome. Please, I see your comment. Go, Dr. Marcia, share with us. So now, what's your take on breaking our brand promises?
I love the discussion. I want to say good afternoon, everyone. I have not been in discussions for a while, but this is very important. The brand loyalty, how you can lose it. What are some of the transgressions? And I feel that one of the greatest burdens that I carry when persons are in their businesses and you speak to them is how and it seems to be the trend, it seems to be something very common these days where persons keep over promising and under delivering. And so they hype you up, they charge you a great deal of money. And that for me is one of the biggest transgressions that is out there now. One of the biggest brand transgressions, because what is in the showcase, we are finding very often that it is not in the storeroom. And that in itself is very, very discouraging. And it makes persons walk away from your business, your brand, not because you're not good at what you do, but because you are not good at meeting the expectations, which can be highly frustrating, or you are trying to get everything under your umbrella instead of focusing on your strengths and what you can do and outsourcing and recommending other persons, which is also one of the good things that builds trust. The next thing I find that is an issue for brand trust is a transgression also, is that we fail to follow up as business people, even when they are successful, even when you have delivered, even when they are pleased with your services. You need to make sure that you follow up, because persons, when you follow up, feel that they are valuable to you. And what you find is that when they're ready to do business again, they find you. So after a sale, after a project, after successful completion of a duty or a task or an exchange or interaction, follow up, man, to find out how persons are doing and how they are moving forward and what else they would need, because sometimes they may not need you, but they trust you so much that they need you to recommend them to the next level of what they need. And I call that poor customer service, where you ignore or mishandle customers' complaints or needs or feelings, and you dictate what you want, and you are not the customer. You are just to give off the service, and those things can be a deterrent. The next thing too is the confidentiality. Sometimes people share their, especially in the book business or in a coaching business, persons may share confidential information with you that they find that you put out there. There are some persons who have been known. There is one man right now in court that is a publisher, and that has used material from somebody's book that they got to publish to deliver something, and that in itself is a great breach of data and confidentiality. So those things damage the brand, and those are things that I don't think we highlight enough. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to share.
Thank you for coming up to share. So again, I love how they sound like little things, but they're huge things, right? They under deliver, over promise thing. Like, I think that I'm sure many of us are guilty of that. So at one time or another, we'll try to be better. That's what I would say. None of us are shinier than gold, right? We're just not. We're human. No, I think the way I look at that, Dr. Marcia, I think more about value for money, right? Are we giving people what they are paying for? Again, that comes down to what's your brand promise, right? Sometimes we don't do everything that we say we're going to do, is what I'm trying to say, Dr. Marcia. But if we give people value for money, less chance they will question whether we've overcharged them and they've got less than they paid for. I think your point about following up is so important. Again, I look at that from the perspective of building relationships with our customers. We must.
But sometimes, sometimes you give value for money too. You are the best at what you do, but your arrogance turn people off, and so people and so people have to settle for less than, because there are some doctors, for example, very great, excellent heart surgeons, but people prefer to take a risk with someone that's come out very new, because the surgeon is too arrogant and nonchalant and very condescending, because they have reached a pinnacle. And many times persons who have established their business and are doing very well forget who carried them when they were not able to walk.
Yeah. Again, I mean, those are things that you add into the conversation, again, to our list. Being condescending, being arrogant. Why would someone trust you if you're that way? Again, these may be subtle things, but they are personal. They are obvious to the customer. How you treat people, they do remember. They do bear in mind. They do remember. So I love Dr. Marcia's point. The confidentiality, again, that is. Oh. That's an easier one. Talking to someone, and then you go divulging information, and it can come back to bite you. Basically, it is a fine line. Of course, now many of us will say, well, they weren't meant to go and tell anyone else. They weren't there, but again, it's for us to work out. I think what Mike is saying, Mike, I love your equation. I think authenticity, in other words, being real and being true to yourself, transparency, doing what you say you will, and actually being, I guess, again, it's these things are about who you are, Mike, more than how you behave, right? It's about who are you really deep down. Integrity, I think that falls into that same category, right? You say they're the KPIs for trust. Yeah.
But Annie, I think you have to bake these into the process too, right? I mean, like you were talking, if something happens, something untoward, well, then just be open, honest, transparent about it. Tell the customer what you're going to do to fix it. Again, maybe it will be a little different than they expect. Again, work with them. But I think if you can keep it, if you can keep this, and yes, the customer is always right, but again, not necessarily in the way that is executed. I think you will continue to go a long way towards meeting their needs, which is why you are in business.
I totally agree with you. I totally agree. It's on the one hand, it's not rocket science. On the other hand, it's the little things, but the little things are the big things. Cyrus, you've been quiet for quite a while.
I was learning.
You've heard a lot, I'm sure.
I've learned a lot. I've learned a lot, mate, and I'm grateful. Dr. Marcia, thank you so much for sharing with us as well. You do a lot of things. If you're interested in finding out what Dr. Marcia does, please go to her LinkedIn page. She does a lot of things, and ceasing to amaze us is not one of them. And she's phenomenal. Please check her work out. Same thing goes with Mike. He's a poet, and he's a fantastic podcaster. Definitely check his work as well. So regarding customer is right, customer is wrong. I've taken a few notes whilst I was listening and learning. Customer is right, customer is wrong. Okay, forget about customer is right or customer is wrong. Customer is paying your bills, brother. So, at the end of the day, right? Customer may have unreasonable requests, right? It is an art to
Yeah.
handle the objection and turn it into a point of strength, right? So there are a lot of times you can go to an Apple store, talk to one of those gurus, right? And I'm saying Apple because Mike kindly mentioned that example, and I am so sorry for a company that can lose a customer like this, who is very highly culpable. they lost a culpable customer. So the customer is saying, "What? I am ready to become a member of that cult." And Apple says, "We're going to add a little bit of friction to the equation because we're silly at times, right?" So your job as a brand is to remove, or if you can't, reduce the friction, right? Remove or reduce. If you can't do it, you need to find a way to do it. So it's not a matter of if, it's a matter of how. Find out how, and your business will thrive, I promise you. Every advice we provide in this show is to help people have a better brand. We're not here to say something and forget about it, right? We're not here to set it and forget it. We're here to learn it, internalize it, and apply it. So
Yes.
I certainly am applying what you guys are saying, because this is feedback. Now, what is feedback? Feedback is, do it how I'm asking, and I promise you I will come back. That is feedback. Don't look at it from feedback from now on, because if you hit that point where your arrogance becomes a barrier between you providing a service and receiving money in exchange for that service or product, it is the day. That day is the day that you hitting yourself in the pocket really hard, which is not fair on you, which is not fair on you or your business or your children or people who rely on you, right? So here's feedback. From now on, I want you to think of it this way. Everybody, think about it this way, please. Customer saying, do it this way, and I will recommend you. I will talk about you, and I will recommend you, and I will love you forever. Now, imagine if Apple had behaved a little bit differently. We would have had a version of Mike advertising them in a positive way. So clearly, he's not best pleased about some aspect of that business. Technically, they may be fantastic, but from a customer perspective, customer care or after sales perspective, they left a lot to be desired. So, and regarding something very important that you mentioned any earlier about having to pay for things in like a subscription style. So I was going to say, at some point in the near future, people are going to purchase the vehicles and have the privilege of having a vehicle subscription style. I want you to mark my words, right? So most of the stuff, from your appliances at home to everything else that you own, ownership is changing, right? So imagine having a vehicle and paying a subscription fee for it. And when it comes to a level where you don't want it anymore, it's like leasing. We have leasing right now, don't we? So it's like leasing is a test mechanism for that future that future style of charging people. So charging will vary in the near future, and money is going to go digital. We all know that, and it will become more traceable. We all know that. There's going to be more stringent controls over it. We know that. Why? Because the way it's going to be spent is going to go subscription style, right? Health is going to be subscription style, and ownership is going to go subscription style. So it's very important. Now, my suggestion to the fantastic ladies and gents in this live event, is go away, have a think. I am certainly think about it, right? Go away and have a think about your business. How can you have a 3-tiered or 4-tiered subscription style in your business? Some of you have a business that is highly has the potential of doing so. Some of you and your businesses doesn't have that. Please think about this. Create a 3-tier, and if you're a genius, create a 4-tier style of charging your customers, not as much as you are now, perhaps a little bit lower, and make it monthly, right? Then they will set it and forget it. Direct debit, right? It will keep the money keeps rolling in your business, and cash flow problem will get resolved. So please have a think about that. And what was the last one? Oh yeah, the last one. You know, something Mike just said, which was fantastic, about he said this, he mentioned this phrase, and he said you have to bake it into your process, right? Now, speaking of baking, there is this famous brand called DoubleTree by Hilton. I think DoubleTree was taken over by Hilton, if I'm not mistaken. So what they do is something really clever, but not many people feel it, right? What they do is when you go to the lobby, they give you a cookie. It just the smell of cookie makes you want a cup of tea or coffee and some cookie, or if it's lunchtime, makes you hungry anyway. So what they do is they bake lots of it, like 50-something thousand dollars worth of cookies in their 500 plus properties, and it's like a tradition. They have even created a company for it, which is working under the company, right? So they give you it just costs, I don't know, 70 cents. And if you live in Britain, it's something like 50 pence, right? Because pound is obviously more expensive. So it costs that much, that little bit, but it leaves a really. I had to think about this in a short while back, and I found out they are paying around $20 million a year. So per annum, annually, they are paying that much for that project. Why is it that every property in their business bakes cookie? They're not about cookies. They're a hotel. They're about accommodation. So why is it that they bake cookies? Because they give those cookies away, right? So that giveaway creates thousands upon thousands of reviews and just mentions. So people, businesses need mentions online, right? We live in an online world, which is going to turn into a subscription style soon, right? So remember, that's going to be the blood in the veins of your business, right? That's mention, that recommendation, right? So what is your cookie in your business? I want you to think about it. I'm not talking about your website, by the way. Those cookies, right? Is unlike the website cookies that many of us turn down. And I promise you, it's so delicious. You're not going to turn down a cookie from DoubleTree by Hilton. They are fantastic, they are delicious, and they are free. What else does a customer want? Imagine someone who's hungry, who's just come from a long journey. They sit in the lobby and they give them a cup of tea and a cookie. They will love you. Thank you.
Yeah, it is what I would call customer service plus. You know, what is it? What's and it's all about how we leave them feeling, Cyrus, right? So how we leave people feeling. Doing business with us is one thing. I said, how if we're going to leave them feeling great. I mean, I've been to DoubleTree several times. Last time I went there, Cyrus, yeah, the cookie was good. But then again, the afternoon tea that cost me £35 was a bit of a shocker. So I'm saying it makes us spend more. This is what our conversation really is about, right? We can learn to build that brand with the things that are important to our customers. Because every business is different. Every business is different, right? You know, what we certainly don't want is that's Marcia mentioned, arrogant people. You know, that's it. Henry says, arrogant physicians. Is that even possible? Yes. Of course, of course. No, you can find arrogance anywhere. You know, Mark and I were talking about the difference between Americans and British people earlier. You know, I don't know which ones are arrogant. You know, but I also I know Americans, they love to be loud and talk quick. The British tend to be quite a talking, but we can talk a lot. That's what we agreed. But there's a difference between confidence and arrogance. I think, you know, it's a fine line. You know, and I'm not going to preach that we should be demure, we should be have our head down at all. You know, but there is, you know, I think Mike mentioned it as well, and where we talk down to our customers, something that we should never do. You know, where we think they're less than, we're better than them. You know, again, so all of this to me comes down to love for our clients. Everyone, we kind of do we. If we love our clients, then we want to do what's right by them. Sometimes we got to do more than they pay us for, because they will pay us more. As you talk about subscriptions, Sarah, you know, what I'm hearing is, yes, we may have to charge them a bit less for what we do, you know, but ultimately, that's a relationship. It's a subscription model builds a relationship where they have to come back and renew, and they're paying every month, right? You know, we need to learn to build those relationships, not think about the money that we want to earn necessarily. You know, someone who buys every month, you know, for a year tends to pay more than they will pay in one big purchase or two big purchases a year. And the more times we get people to pay, the better, the happier we'll be. You know, so last I'll say, Cyrus, I think, you know, the feedback issue is such a big one. So many people take feedback as an affront. How dare you criticize my work? You know, I said, lucky for me, I learned when I was a kid that feedback is, you know, it's everything. I said, now where I worked, you know, we used to review each other's work, and there was one of my colleagues who insisted on reviewing everyone else's writing using a red pen. You print your blog out, your guide out, and cover it in red ink to tell you what you need to change. You know, so of course, you can either get very annoyed, or you can embrace it and say, right, if it makes my documents better, I'll take it. You know, when Mike talks about integrity, authenticity, who you really are, as I always say, you know, are you the person who truly embraces your customer's point of view, your customer's, you know, realities or experience of your business? We have to be those people, right? If we're not, it'll come back and bite us. You know, we have to be. You know, this is not about customer service per se. This is not about, you know, what our brand looks like. This is about who we really are deep down. That's what I'm talking about in this room. I can talk about this topic anywhere else, but I'm saying that it's here because, you know, this is a mindset thing. You know, who are you really? You know, and how do you make sure you don't willfully break your client's trust? You know, it's the little things that are the big things. Michael, I wonder what if you want to add to the conversation. Otherwise, I'll play a video and then we can close up. I can let you go. How's that?
I was just going to key off what you said. I spent, I don't know, really even, well, I would say almost all of my career in one way or another in customer service. And what I mean by that is, even when I was a CISO, I had internal customers. You know, that they were the business people, they were the C-suite, they were the board. And when I was a tech, you know, I dealt directly, went out actually and you know, fixed our telecom equipment. And in some cases, I dealt with some very irate customers. That's certainly one level of feedback. And I think it's just so important, whatever that feedback looks like. It doesn't, because one of the things I tried to get the business people to understand was the usefulness of an audit. And I'm like, and I was in a company that was very it was a foreign based company, and they were very into face saving. So I had to say, look, this audit that I'm performing is so that we can gauge where we are today. It's a snapshot of our program, and I'm basing that on regulatory requirements, but also what other people do in our business. So this is not to be taken as a slight or anything like that. It's to gather very useful information about where we need to go. And so if you're using, like I think every business should probably have some customer group customer. A lot of bigger companies actually have these that they develop over time, or a company can even sponsor these groups, right? They'll they'll happen one way or another, and it's better if you can maybe have a little bit of a input into that. But I completely agree that how do you know, other than just looking at sales, which sales can go up and down for all sorts of reasons, but you should really be having your pulse on what your customers are thinking about you and your business. That's all I have to offer.
No, I think that's wisdom again, Mike. You beat me to it, and the customer groups and the customer community engagement, we call it in big business. Of course, and many of us would say we're too small to have community engagement people. Unless if someone's not doing it, you have to do it yourself, right? But engaging our customers, like Dr. Marcia said, following up with them, talking to them. It's so important. Look, that's one of the points in my video I'm going to show now, and then we can close the show, Mike. I'm sure you see it in there. Let me show the video, and then we can talk about it really. So it's important. This video is a bit longer, so more on the 5-minute side than the short side. But I think it's worth watching to see the 6 elements of branding that we could focus on. Now watch it, and then let's talk about what you think about it, right?
And we concluded that their success had more to do with their brand culture and the courage of their leadership than with their marketing prowess. Clearly to us, these were principles that could be learned and applied. So we made it our mission. To not just expose these principles, but to teach them to other brands and other organizations who are brave enough and forward-thinking enough to radically reorient themselves around these 6 areas. And I'm going to share them with you now. Cult brands endeavor to be remarkable in everything that they do or sell. And I use the term remarkable in its truest sense. It's the ability to evoke a verbal response or a remark from consumers. Because here's the thing that cult brands understand. Mediocrity does not win fans and loyal customers. Cult brands exploit the human desire to share by intentionally creating social currency. They know that doing something or providing something that's truly exceptional is guaranteed to get people talking. And what better form of marketing is there? When Apple released the first iPod back in 2001, they knew that 1,000 songs in your pocket as a tagline was guaranteed to make music lovers gasp in astonishment if they hadn't already done so at the product design itself. And the rest is history. The most successful brands stand for something bigger than they make or sell. These are brands driven by a powerful ethos, a higher purpose. A study by Havas Media showed that purposeful brands outperform the stock market by 120%. It's kind of funny because that same study also showed that 73% of brands wouldn't be missed by consumers at all if they disappeared entirely. Cult brands succeed in getting customers to buy them again and again because they first get them to buy in to their noble cause. They espouse a shared purpose with consumers that inspires them to choose them over completely acceptable alternatives. Cult brands focus on being inspiring to their internal audience first. Contrary to popular belief, cult followings don't spontaneously materialize amongst a group of external consumers. Cult brands focus their marketing efforts as much on their employees as they do on consumers, and it's been proven to pay off. A 2013 study showed that brands who increase employee engagement levels also increased profit. This here is Tony Hsieh. Tony Hsieh is the founder and CEO of Zappos. Tony's empowered every employee in the entire organization at Zappos to do whatever it takes to wow customers. In fact, they celebrate call center staff who keep customers on the phone for hours instead of minutes. As a result, Zappos not only reaps the benefit of delighted customers, but they reap the benefit of maximum profit margins because they never, ever sell anything at a discount. Their customers are willing to pay full price every time. Cult brands know that creating believers begins on the inside with employees, especially frontline staff who interact with customers on a daily basis. Cult brands exploit a fundamental aspect of human psychology. See, we humans are hardwired through evolution to instantly assess the intentions and abilities of others to do us harm or do us good. And we perceive brands the same way that we perceive other people. In 2010, a group of social psychologists found that the human traits that brands exhibit influence 50% of all purchase intent, of all loyalty, and the likelihood to recommend. That's extremely significant. Cult brands just don't treat their customers as passive buyers. They treat them as active participants in the ongoing development and improvement of their offerings because they know that their biggest ideas are going to come from their fans, not from their employees. So they build and nurture communities of fans as forums for generating and testing new ideas. And that's why half the Fortune 500 have made co-creation an integral part of their innovation strategy. That's also why 0% of Lego's product development happens in-house. 0. Lego's head of community business says that 99% of their brand talent doesn't even work for the company. It's all in the community. Now, I'd hazard a guess that most average brands don't even have a head of community business. It's because cult brands prioritize listening over telling, right? They empower customers to feel a sense of ownership over the brand that cements their loyalty. Cult brands become so highly relevant that they can't be ignored. They weave themselves into the fabric of pop culture. They pervade their customers' lives through a multitude of touchpoints that surrounds them, that envelops them. Cult brands intercept customers rather than interrupt them with irrelevant communications. I have 2 kids, and let me tell you, Disney has been ubiquitous in our household since the baby showers. The movies, the toys, the clothes, the books, the apps, the games, the food even. Seriously, my 3-year-old daughter eats frozen Cheerios for breakfast.
There, right? I love those 6 principles. It is about being remarkable. Otherwise, no one talks about you. What is there to say if you are average and mediocre? That's no one wants to buy from mediocre. No one wants average. Surely, no one wants. If you do, then I'm all ears. I've never met anyone who says I want. Apart from Michael, who says I want average, I want okay, no one wants okay. No, do better than that, right? I said, and there we create a vision the purpose, my friends. Do we dare to create a vision for our business where we are more than just what we do? It's a greater meaning, it's a greater purpose to our existence. And that greater purpose is a promise to our clients. That's what they really want to engage with. That's what they buy into. I think big brands do this every day, my friends. Or do we? Is the question I'm asking, right? I can be inspirational. This is probably Annie's issue, Mike, where I struggle. I don't inspire people. No, I have. I'm not employing the right people, Mike. That's where it comes down to. That's my lesson, I think. So I tend to go for junior, cheaper staff. That's been my downfall till now. So I'm minded to go the other way and go for graduate level employees. Alas, I tell you the truth, they cost money. The better they are, the higher up you're recruiting from, the more you have to pay. And now I can think about paying more. But I think when you're starting a business, growing your team requires the right team, the right people who do want to be inspired, people who can be responsible, accountable. And as Michael said, they can have that entrepreneurial perspective, outlook on life, and work to do exactly that, right? Be involved. Involving. No, I missed one. Sorry. Be relatable. Look, brands have personalities. That's a way of saying brands have people. The good brands have people. The people see them. The customers see them as people, primarily. That's why it matters so much who your team is. Do you relate to your customers? Do you have relationships with them? Do they know you as a person? When they do, and you are the person, and you're their friend, you are their confidant, their consultant, their guide, the one that can tell, the one who genuinely cares about them. They will show them, as Sarah said, you show you care, they will show you their money. I tell you. That's how to look at it. That's how it works. Mike mentioned our community engagement officers. Again, the customer groups is what Mike called it, right? At the heart of involving customers is listening. This is why I've banged on about feedback so much today. We have to be willing to involve our customers. And of course, the man said on the video, I never learned his name. He talks about co-creation. Again, I know from experience, when your customers have more input into what you do and how you do it, they're more likely to buy it because it's designed for them, their way. It works the way they want. It gives them what they want. It's whether we as businesses, as brands, are willing to commit to being that business that does what the customers really want and involve them in the process. Not just in creating posts, not just in creating user-generated content, but in genuinely looking at how we do what we do. Again, from the publishing side, I'll say to you, my best authors, if they have a readers group, they have a readers forum, they have a readers club of sorts who will give them feedback on their book before we go to market. So how many of us really involve our customers on that level? We could, we should, we can, we ought to. Because take whichever one, if you don't like should, if you don't like can, don't like could, then take ought to. We'll benefit from. Same thing, right? And I said the last point about now being pervasive. You see, the digital world gives us a false image of what it takes to create a memorable brand. You see, when we do ads, we target individuals. When we do LinkedIn, do search and connect like I used to do, I'm talking to individuals, saying, here's who we are. Do you want to connect with us? The worst, I think, as been said, it is a case of almost being everywhere. I call it, using the omni-channel experience that digital gives us. Yes, you're in your posts. Yes, you're other people. You're in my events, and other people's events too. Your events. Yes, you're doing seminars. You're in other places where your customers hang out. These are things that we can all do. Again, that's not because we just want to be everywhere. It's like, I guess I preach the issue of the matter of being famous. Fame is not about people signing your autographs. Fame in my world is about your customers, your target audience knowing you enough to know you, like, and trust you. We'd have to see you everywhere. Like, we'll talk these days about you need 12 touch points to sell anything. What are your 12 touch points? Where are the 12 places people are going to see you, hear you, feel you, to know that they want to do business with you? I'll leave that for you to decide, my friends. I wonder, Michael, Cyrus, what say you? Hopefully they haven't all gone to sleep. They're still awake.
All you need is love. Danny. All you need is love.
Sing it for
And
us
I'm-
now. All right, Mike.
No, but I'm serious. I mean, if we can really strip down all the nonsense and all the, I mean, yes, of course we all want sales. Yes, of course we all want money. But at the end of the day, it really does come down to relationships, and those are built on this currency that can be described as love.
I agree, 100%. I agree 100%. If that's what you take away from here today, my friends, it's been worth it. Again, Michael, I argue this all the time. If we love our clients, if we love people we're here to serve, almost like we'll do whatever it takes, and we'll learn, we'll adapt, we'll flex to meet their needs. This is at the heart of any brand promise. No, but not everyone has that love, right? Mike, thanks for sharing that. Why Cyrus and Michael find their way back. Cyrus says, nothing erodes trust faster than unmet expectations. Brand is a promise. I agree, Cyrus. Break that promise and your brand becomes just a name people use to explain disappointment. Indeed. That kind of feeling you get when you open a pack of Walker's crisps or chips for American friends and find that it's not even the third form. I agree with you, Cyrus. Disappointments. Again, we live in a world of shrinkflation. I'm sure we've all noticed, right? You pay more for the same product, but you get less, which is it's a remarkable existence. Please don't be that person. Don't give them less than you promise, and don't say the value for money is a thing. It's a real thing. So
They're thinking about your health, and probably
they're not. Charge me less. I'll tell you another one, Cyrus. I'll tell you another one. Self-service in supermarkets, right? The bane of my life. The bane of my life. I always go there and I say to him, "Where's the checkout I can go to?" There isn't one. Serve yourself. I'm like, charge me less then. Charge me less. I know myself doing your job for myself, but I can't pay the same money when I'm doing the work myself. What do you think this is? And you know what, Cyrus? I always queue up. Always queue up. I'm not going to serve myself. Not to give you money. Go for it.
Something that amazes me about some brands is when everybody else was selling books in bookstores, right? Jeff Bezos turned around and said, "Oh, I want to sell books online," and then everyone was laughing at him, and they were like, "Oh, that business is gonna fall because who's gonna buy books online, right?" Imagine that. Then he spent like 20 odd years building that business. Now everybody else found out. Oh, hang on a minute, that business model is working. Now everyone is buying the items that they want online, right? Almost everyone. Now, Amazon all of a sudden, this is what I mean. In my book, I've mentioned the difference between thermometer brands and thermostat brands, right? So Amazon has now created shops on high streets, like on main roads of the cities, right? So there are no employees in them. Just go in there and scan stuff and pay for it and come out. So this is a warning for people who think, oh, AI is gonna steal our jobs. No, 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 no. Clever people who know how to use AI are going to steal your jobs. They're going to make you irrelevant, right? So if you're in that position, if you're working for a shop or whatever, or if you have a shop that works like in a traditional style, think about this. AI is not. It's wrong to say AI is coming. AI has been in your kitchen, in your washing machine for ages, right? So that makes decisions. How much water? How much detergent? When should I empty it, etc., etc. If this happens, do that. It's an algorithm, isn't it? So AI has been there for us for a long while. Has been, and it has been for so long we don't even feel the presence of it anymore, right? So, so yeah. The point is, some brands like Jeff Bezos's brand, Amazon, they always move in the opposite direction of the market. They change the market. As soon as the market creates a void, they go ahead and fill that void. They know what they are doing.
I agree. I agree. You know, there's a personal touch element in there somewhere still, right? You know, I can't. You know, it's even with technology, let's not blame the tech for being our be all and end all. And don't forget, one of our principles is the fact that people want you to be relatable. People fall in love with people, not with machines. Yeah, but we can learn and smell the coffee and see what's coming, Cyrus. And at that,
Well, Cyrus has indicated something interesting there. And that's why AI shouldn't be called artificial intelligence. It should be called augmented intelligence.
I
Because
agree.
it augments.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. Totally. You know, when people ask me, "What's your opinion on AI?" It's like asking me, "What's your opinion on the internet?" So, what do you mean? What's your opinion on AI? What aspects of it are you talking about? Are you talking about video creation? Are you talking about music creation? Are you talking about calculation? Are you talking about automation? What part of it? So, maybe things will get better for people, and they will fear it less when they change the questions they're asking about it, perhaps.
I could agree. No, so Michael, I think that we are so far from machine learning. I don't know whether people don't realize this. You know, we're using tech that have systems, algorithms, and formulas. Like, I don't know what do you want to call it, but we're nowhere near intelligent machines. Nowhere near it. The machines can do stuff, but they're not intelligent in the way AI really will be. And when that day comes, yeah, good luck to humanity, right? The world will
That's
change.
why we should make it mandatory for humans to start learning machine language.
Yeah, I could agree with you. Yeah, Mike.
Any, we don't know how we think. So I'm sorry, we're not going to build thinking machines anytime soon. They do a very good job of mimicking thinking. And I'm not taking anything away because I use them every day. And
That's
machine
too funny.
learning.
That is just too funny.
Well, what?
It's true. That it's true. It's true. Now we all use technology every day. Go on, Mike.
Then machine learning has been around forever. In cybersecurity, it's not a nice to have anymore. It's a must have because we have so much data coming at us. We literally, as humans, can't deal with it at machine speed. So we need tools to assist us raise that that event to sort of a red alert so that we can go look at it and deal with it. We need something to declutter from the noise. I don't look at LLMs, for instance. Again, there's all sorts of use cases for them, all good. But I also think I'm really having a problem with Sammy Altman saying that we're going to have AGI in whatever it is, 5 years. I think that's overhyped. Let's look at where it can be used. Let's to what we've been talking about here. Let's look at how we can use it to meet our clients' needs. But this thing of 4x or 10x efficiency based on LLMs, I'm sorry, we're gonna have an implosion, and it's already actually happening as far as deployment, at least in the United States, that the realities are starting to come out, that all these promises that we thought we were going to get out of LLMs aren't necessarily. Now, it's not to say we can't move forward. It's not to say, just like robotics in automotive and other places, not to say we have some interesting humanoid robot technology coming online. And we should all be paying attention to that and figuring out how we can, stay relevant. So
Yeah.
that's my pitch on AI.
Yeah, no, again, I tend to agree with you, Mike. I think we're a long way from intelligent machines. They can do stuff, but it's programs they're running. And they can process things quicker than we can. Of course, they can. That doesn't make them intelligent. Think of how intelligent we really are. I'm saying this even in line of our business of this conversation. Our intelligence means we can make big choices. We can make different choices. We can factor in different the things that really matter to our clients. I'm not saying machines can't learn we can't give them the formula and the algorithms, as Cyrus calls it. But intelligent machines we were nowhere near there at all. Nowhere near. Michael, did you finish or? Sorry, I think you triggered something in all of us, so we had to interject.
No, I'm done. Yeah, I think you're getting ready to close, so that's good enough.
Yeah. Thank you so much. Henry, I don't know whether you've been facetious. There's no need to get involved or get engaged. There is, Henry, there is. Life has already swallowed you up. Henry, surely, we're not there yet, right? Henry says, just wake up and get busy finally understanding how this whole life thing actually works for you. What I think the way life thing works is the way is how we work. But if I've missed a point, Henry, please do explain, and I should elaborate, should I say, and then I can explain, right? Look, yes, Mike, I agree with you. Thank you, everyone who's joined the studio. Mike, Michael, Cyrus, thank you so much for being here. I love your additions. Dr. Marcia as well, of course. I thank you all. Dr. Marcia is remarkable, Cyrus. She's one of the co-authors of my book behind me, Lesson Learned from COVID. Where is it over there? Somewhere. My camera's just not.
That's a good book. I recommend it to people. It's available on Amazon as well. That's a very good book.
I thank you. And I say any kind words I would take, Cyrus. I would take that. And look, I suppose maybe the last thing I want to say today is how many brands, how many people do you know? How many professionals? Call them what you like. They're still brands in my eyes, right? How many brands do you know that no one talks about, no one says anything about? I think that's the danger. That's a real danger. So some people have people who wax lyrical about them. They quote brands, even on LinkedIn, for example. But so many people who do stuff, offer a service, no one talks about. So that is where you don't want to be, right? You want to have clear promises, a clear way of doing things your way. It's not how you. It's not doing things. It's how do you do things? What's your way of doing things? That's where your brand really is. And don't be scared. Be brave. Articulate it. State it and live by it. Like me, you might well realize there's some lessons to learn, of course, going forward. But learn we will, and we'll do better going forward. Until that day happens, you better be the person who does what you promise. It's not a bad place to be, I assure you. Given that when you do the right things, they'll pay you more, they'll love you, they'll keep coming back to you. they'll give you the life you want, right? Thank you so much, everyone. Everyone in the comments, as Mike says, I'm truly grateful to you, Charito. So, Melissa, if you haven't been to her room, do connect with her. She has rooms at the weekend and at night, so do join her. Crystal, we didn't quite see you come back, but hopefully the cafe has internet, maybe not. But Michael, Cyrus, I thank you all. You're absolute legends. Look, so of course, I would say do go in the comments, connect with people in there. And more than connect, let's become real friends. Your business demands that you make friends. Again, don't just think your customers, think potential customers too. Yeah, how you say you be is how you treat people, how you treat everyone. You might call it authenticity. I say just it's how you be, right? Let's be those people who are genuinely loving of our clients and loving of people and want to serve people with our solution. Look, I'm back again in 2 weeks' time. What's my room tomorrow? My room tomorrow is Christiana's miscarriage and baby loss room. So do join us. Of course, I'll send you all the link, like I always do, right? It's an early one though, Michael. 2 p.m. my time. What's that? What's that your time, Mike? 7 o'clock in the morning, I think. Something like that. But do join us, my friends.
It's a wee bit early.
Totally understand, my friends. Look, thank you so much for being here today. So we're back again in 2 weeks' time. Oh, I'm doing a book to business on Friday as well. So do join us for that one. Take care, everyone. Take care. Cyrus, you're a star as always. Can't wait to get your book finished.
My pleasure. Thank you so much.
No, thank you. Bye, everyone. Bye, everyone.
Every step forward is a new beat to your drama. She's success with Global.Media.com and celebrating with or without champagne or rum. She's success with Global.Media.